Fancy that when you turn the mute button off.
Oh no, the mute button was on. Ha! The mute button was on!
Well, we've got 13 of you who can now hear us.
Okay. Hi. Woo! Still no sound?
No, it sound's coming. It takes 30 seconds to come through. So, yep, I'm just seeing the replay on the screen, and that means everybody should have sound now. So, sorry about that. We had put it on mute while we were setting everything up. So, wait, this is an informal chat. We wish we were all in sitting around our living room or a cabin or a bar or we're at a campfire after a run chatting, but yeah, such as technology.
All right. Well, the question that I did ask while the mic was on mute is, tell us what you did for your run today. For most people, it's a long run Sunday or a recovery from a long run Saturday. So let us know what you ran today.
Or maybe you're just hanging out.
We had a pretty nice little snowstorm going on here in the mountains up above Moab, Utah. So Brian and I ran for about an hour. Yeah, well, these big, fat, wet flakes were coming down on top of us. It's pretty nice. We haven't had much winter, so it's kind of exciting.
Getting a 6-inch snowfall or so in right before spring starts. So,
well, we'll
2 more minutes and we'll get started. Just want to give everybody a chance to tune in. Yep, a whole bunch more folks are tuning in right now. We got 16 folks watching us right now, and hope you've had a great weekend so far.
So I have a little bit of an announcement, although Brian's already put it on his Facebook page today. Oh. Brian got into the White Mountains 100 mile. It's a 100-mile over snow race outside of Fairbanks, Alaska. When the lottery happened, he was 55th on the waiting list. Is that right?
Yep, 55th.
As you were getting up this morning, you received an email invite saying you were off the wait list.
Well, I went to bed last night, reasonably late. It was, let's see, reasonably late, and I was 7th on the wait list last night when I went to bed. Woke up, saw a ton of movement had happened overnight, and then 5 minutes later, before I'd even got my cup of coffee, I had an email and said yes. So
Brian's packing his bags to go to Alaska on Wednesday to run. We're going to air quote run.
There's no running.
Because of the big pack and the snow and the cold and just lots of...
The upside is my one on-snow training run was at 10,000 feet here in the LaSalle. So that was a little on soft, fresh snow. So that was a bit discouraging, but... It means Alaska's going to be easy, right? Anyway, we're glad you've all tuned in and are watching us and with us. And we've got a whole bunch of people. We've got 36 miles logged from 3 people. It's a solid... Oh, somebody's outside Keswick.
We love Keswick. Richie, we love Keswick.
Amherst, oh boy.
But Allison ran in the desert, and I don't know, I'm a desert rat too, Allison, so hope your day was
I don't know where Morpheus had his or her miserable run, but you got it done.
And cold and windy Amherst, Massachusetts for Bhushan Shurish.
Yeah, I'm going to guess Amherst has had a pretty rough winter. From all my friends back in the east and northeast, it's been seems like been a bit unusual. We've had a non-winter, endless autumn into early spring. And
I think that's why Brian wants to go to Alaska.
Also has me scared to go to Alaska after not having had any winter. All right.
So the topic of today's Patreon family chat is going into the Wayback Machine and the early days of iRunFar.
So. We didn't get so many questions online, but a bunch of you are watching, so I figure you guys are interested. And since most of the early story, the backstory, probably comes from me, we decided to have Megan interview me, I guess. And I'll probably ramble on a bunch and hope that you guys will just chime in with questions. Holy moly, I'm going to hope that minus 26, no matter what temperature scale that's called. I'm sorry.
Well, if you, Megan Hicks of iRunFar, and I'm here with Brian Powell, and we're talking about the old days of iRunFar. How's it going, Brian?
Oh, it's a good day. iRunFar's still here, however, 12 years after it started, no matter how you want to measure it. So,
well, so if one goes into the internet machine and asks how long the website iRunFar.com has been around, the internet tells us 2006. So you must have had a good day someday back in the era of, blogspot.com world.
Oh, it was before Blogspot for me. I was preparing for the bar exam in Park City, Utah. I'm like, now would be a perfect time to learn how to code, and I might as well register a domain name while I'm at it. So, Chief Justice of the Common Pleas. Sorry, I'm distracted by somebody. Have some mushy peas while you're there and a good pint. I've waited for Megan on a run while she was running the early part of the
Pub Grammar on course.
Yeah.
Right?
So anyway, totally got distracted there. Yeah, I registered the domain name iRunFar in July 2016. And
2006.
2006, excuse me. You're right. Yeah. And it was iRunFar. Interesting. Everybody, when I tell them my email, which is runfar, they're like, do you mean iRunFar? I'm like, no. RunFar came way before iRunFar. It was I had a friend who was connected, and back when Gmail was invite only, you could have a 6-character name on Gmail. And I'm like, I want the shortest email I can have forever. So I got RunFar, 6 characters, and that stuck. Still use it today, and RunFar, the domain was taken, so iRunFar is here. And it kind of worked.
Let's talk about the setting of 2006 for a minute, because 2006, Ultra Running Magazine was going strong. There was Mr. Jensen's website, run100s.com. That was literally the first ultra running website that I ever perused.
The Ultra List.
2006 was a booming year for ultra running in general, but not a year for the online space for trail and ultra running. Can you talk about what the world of online...
it was rudimentary websites. There was no real... ultrarunning.com probably existed, but I never went there. I went to the website. I would go to run100s.com, which had some information on some of the 100-milers, some other races. You could put your own profile up there if you wanted it. A lot of the information on the internet about ultra running at that time was the ultra running email listserv, Dartmouth listserv. Oh man, I had to get a separate email account just to get the listserv because it was so intense. But yeah, and a lot of just sort of the instructional information at that time was like Run 100s, and it was clips from old ultra list conversations about this advice or that advice. So yeah, not a lot. And I kind of, at the time, registered iRunFar thinking that I would create an informational website, and actually learned a little bit of coding and put up a very rudimentary website at that point, thinking that I would, I don't know if it would be race listings, but just share sort of go from the internet 1.0 or beta on ultra running information into sort of the next step. But I want to go back in time. Sid Chen.
Sid Chen. I'm going to pull up his question here. VHTRC, that's an acronym that might be familiar to Central East Coasters. What is that, and how did it influence you?
The VHTRC is the Virginia Happy Trails Running Club, and it is based out of the D.C. area with a very wide radius around it. And it was the first probably trail running group I ran with. I lived in D.C. at the time, didn't have a car, and wanted to get out on the trails. There were some in D.C., but I didn't even know of those yet, and I wanted to get out and run the trails. And I sort of heard about ultra running, but not really. Anyway, I met a guy on a street corner in D.C., 5 a.m. one morning to go out, get a ride out to the mountains, and it was Joe Clapper from the VHTRC, and I forget who else was, either like a Tommy Nielsen or a Derek Carr or Scotty Mills was out there on the same run, and got involved with those jokers. I thought it was just a trail running club, but no, they were all ultra runners, and lots of experience at 100 miles and other races, and they were probably in a much smaller geographic area. One of the first news sources, online news sources for ultra running, online websites that gave news for ultra running, and it was all centered around the club. But Anster Davidson did a great job being the webmaster there, and that's how I learned a lot about early ultra running.
So if you guys have other questions as we're going along, make sure to just type them in there in the comments section, and we'll try to answer them as we go. You were doing your own fast running at the time. I think you were neighbors with Mike Wardian, and maybe you and some other folks were doing track workouts, and you were on the famous Montreal Nathan ultra running team. Like, yeah, your own personal ultra running was going strong, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of sort of fell into ultra running 2 years out of college, and really enjoyed it. And at the time, 2002 to 2006, I was in law school and kind of busy because I was also working full time. But I would get out and run at night, and when I could meet the Washington Running Club for my track workouts, and I'd meet up with a VHTRC when I could for runs in the mountains or just long runs around town, and that was great. I think it was at the end of 2006 that I branched off from my long running personal blog to one about running. I didn't want to bore my non-running friends with my running talk, which I was writing about more and more. And then getting invited onto the Montreal Nathan ultra running team, I wanted to, that was sort of a day where the running blog was a thing. So I sort of developed the running blog at that point. And yeah, I was running pretty well, nothing crazy, but I was sort of a decent mid-Atlantic ultra runner, and yeah.
So if you go back to some of the first entries on iRunFar.com, you talk about track workouts, you talk about, where you went on a bender and you're a little bit hungover for your run the next day.
I did notice that post recently.
But at some point, your posts started transitioning from really personal to how to do this and how to do that and how to choose a trail shoe. It's an interesting story how that happened. Why? How?
Yeah, to go back to 2006, I'd already had an idea for an informational website about ultra running on the internet, but I just had a personal running blog, which was great, and I enjoyed it. But yeah, I still felt like there wasn't a whole lot of information online about ultra running, and I was out at the Wasatch 100, just hanging out. I think I was pacing somebody later in the day, but hanging out at the Lambs Canyon aid station about midway for hours.
Hot afternoon.
Yeah, there was Ethan, who was like, I don't know if at the time or slightly thereafter, the VASC team sort of coordinator, and AJW was there, and there was a couple other jokers too, and just had a great time, and met a freelance writer, Christy, and she was going to be working on a story about how to run your first ultra marathon from Runner's World, and everybody was chatting along, and somehow she got my information and wanted to interview me afterward about choosing a first ultra and how to train for it, and I agreed. And I remember I spent some time taking notes before the call, just a good self-reflection on those topics, and had the call. I think it was on Amtrak, going somewhere, and had the interview, and it was a fun interview. And then I decided a bit later, I have all this information, and I felt like I had basically the bones of these two articles, how to choose your first ultra and how to run your first ultra marathon. And
from talking to her, you had
the notes. I had the notes, and then I fleshed that out and was like, all right, here's my chance to make a jump and, make an informational resource on ultra running on the web.
And so you did.
I did.
Fast forward to 2008, when I look back at the sort of the birth of iRunFar, 2008 was the beginning of the transition. Some stuff started happening. You started doing things for iRunFar. Can you talk a little bit about that year?
Yeah. I was enjoying trying to share information about ultra running, and I enjoyed writing about it, and it was nice doing something other than the legal practice. And I had a real interest in the gear and the training. And I remember putting out a question about, I think I was no longer on the Montreal team. And I remember putting out a question of like, does anybody share their thoughts on the La Sportiva? I think it was Fireblade and another shoe. And people responded, including head of La Sportiva. I don't know if he was the head at the moment, but had Jonathan, who heads La Sportiva North America right now. And I just got a sample pair of shoes and started writing about that and made a couple more connections and went that summer, I don't know if it was July or August, to the Outdoor Retail Show, which for those who aren't familiar, it's where all the outdoor brands get together to show their products for the upcoming seasons, really preview what's coming out maybe 6 months later. So going there and meeting the brands and seeing all the new product. I was a kid in a candy shop. I remember like printing out business cards beforehand, which I still have the same design to this day. It's got a little like a label, like a name label that you'd get at a convention, but it's like my name is, and then I hand scrawl Brian on it, and little icebreaker for the show. But so I did that, and I started writing about product reviews, and really gotten more involved in that. I went to Trans Rockies that year.
Hey, you went to Trans Rockies that year? I did too.
No way! That's what a coincidence!
That's so weird.
Oh my god! Yeah, we met there. The rest is history, shall we say. I went there via Solomon. Brought me over, and I met my partner for the race. It was at the time you had to run as a partner, as two people. Martin Gaffari, who now is the head of marketing or leads the marketing outreach for Scott over out of Europe. So he needed Twinkly. He's been around around the ultra world for a number of years now. So
you were still lawyering full time. This was
not really enjoying it, but I was.
Yeah. So I think when I think of iRunFar was kind of birthed out of this stuff happening, but also you sort of figuring out, okay, I went to law school, I was in the professional lawyering world for a while, but you weren't feeling a sense of satisfaction there. So maybe the growth of one.
Later in 2008 and early 2009, I was dissatisfied with being an attorney. There wasn't a whole lot of personal satisfaction in it and a ton of stress. It was regulatory law, and I actually liked the technical aspects of it, but it wasn't personally pleasing. And I guess I saw going to Outdoor Retailer and sort of making those connections is that I was an attorney, and maybe I'd make the connections and build a reputation for myself amongst the industry that I could come over and work in a marketing department for one of the brands. I mean, I'd worked with, being on the Montreal Nathan team, I'd sort of interacted with people who had professional roles in communications. There was also, some of the bigger companies surely have legal departments, and I could work for them. I didn't know I wasn't gunning for a role, but I just thought, hey, maybe this can transition me into the outdoor world. But I want to back up because Richie Wilson has a good question sort of about the early days. And what was the intention of your blog initially? Purely to vent your thoughts about running, or to try to get an audience and possibly gain income from it? Totally the first part. When I first started law school, when I was working full time and going to law school, I almost immediately at the start started a blog, totally personal, just about my own thoughts, because I knew I wouldn't have time with a full-time job in law school to stay in touch with all my friends as much as I'd like, and my family. So I started blogging, and it was a really good way to share what I was up to, how I was busy, how things were going, and stay in touch with people. And eventually, I was writing more and more about my running, and I didn't want to bore my friends that had been reading my blog for 4 years. So I spun off just away. I mean, I was at this point 4 or 5 years into running with the Virginia Happy Trails Club, and sort of met people through growing geographic region up to like the GAC in Massachusetts, Gillies Athletic Club, and some of the West Virginia mountain runners, and just sort of was built, met people at races around, had been on the Montreal team, so I had all these friends. I guess this came before the Montreal team, but anyway, it was like I had a bunch of online friends, and run blogging was a thing at the time, and yeah, it was just a way to stay in touch with people.
But his question does dovetail to sort of the story of early 2009. Just about this time of year, 9 years ago, you were getting ready to go and race the Marathon des Sables, and that became a life-changing time for you. You decided that you did want to pursue iRunFar as something to try to make a living off of, try to make work. Yeah.
So I guess, to rewind just a couple months, 4 or 5 months, at the end of 2008, I don't know if I'd met him in person yet. I'd have to go back, but Michael Hall, who I'd met he worked with Attain, which was a sort of an ecologically friendly apparel company.
Still are, right?
Yeah. Really cool stuff.
Yeah.
He asked me to coach him because I'd kind of written this article or published this article on my website and had seen some good results from my own running and seemed to know a little bit of what I was talking about. I had been running for 16 years at that point.
That makes you sound old.
Oh, I am old. There was less sugar in the cinnamon beard at the time. I had no thoughts of coaching, but Michael approached me and I decided to coach. One person, I didn't reach out. I didn't actively advertise. I didn't do anything like that. Or I didn't even put it on my blog that I was coaching for a little while. But yeah, I saw that I could then, coaching was a way to maybe make a little, if I didn't want to go directly and work in industry at that time, or that didn't work out initially, I could do some coaching. Or I think I'd done a little bit of writing for Running Times at that point. I'd had a couple collegiate connections, first to via a friend, Mark Shayafor, who was in the class at Haverford above me, where I went. And then he introduced me to Adam Chase, who was writing for Running Times, and still is super active in writing about trail running and ultra running. And just, I wrote a little freelance for Running Times, and, sort of was thinking about, the only possibility wasn't just working in industry, that I could do some freelance writing, I could do some coaching. And then, we went to Marathon des Sables together, and I was really discontent with my professional work. I had started seeing a therapist, nothing crazy, just just a lot of anxiety from the work and not a lot of satisfaction, and then learned a lot of good stuff, but clearly wasn't happy. And I remember going out to Marathon des Sables, which is going to be a time totally disconnected from electronics, and with Megan and Michael Wardian and some other people who became fast friends in the middle of the desert, and just a time I wasn't thinking about it when I was racing my butt off on the stages, but you're sitting around camp
hours and hours a day.
Between 14 and 21 and a half hours a day, so there's plenty of time to lay in the tent and chat, because you're sharing it with 7 other people. I just kind of thought about it, and remember coming on the flight back with Megan. I still lived in DC, and she was out working in Yosemite, but I think we had the flight to New York together or something, or wherever, and just saying, hey, Megan, you mind if, you we'd sort of thought about this beforehand. And I just was coming back and was like, hey, Megan, I think it's time, do you mind if I come and move in with you? And I'm going to, have to shoestring this, and I can split groceries, but do you mind if I just crash on your, essentially crash on your couch?
So I want to be clear on this for a second, because sometimes people, people envision iRunFar as something that not necessarily is. When you decided to make a go at iRunFar full time, did you have any income, anything?
Yeah, I had that $100 a month coaching client.
All right, awesome.
I may have had 2 or 3. I'd have to find my records.
No advertisements.
No, I was very opposed to. When I quit my job, I think I had 200 visitors a day, which I remember looking back a couple years later being, what the hell was I thinking? And there was a lot of interaction and really cool community, but it was like, I didn't want to be the blogger who put up advertising on a 200 visitor a day blog. Like, it just, yep. I could work on projects, which happen with brands or have some sort of partnerships. But I didn't want to have advertising, and I didn't until sometime in 2010, I think. Like, it was a ways.
Sid Chen asks, when and how did Megan get involved with iRunFar? We'll talk about that a little bit further down the line. Yeah. But I do like to pride myself in being iRunFar's like only little angel investor. Like, I provided
a roof.
I provided the iRunFar world headquarters for its first year and a half of life, something like that.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think at some point during that time, I started chipping in toward rent.
Okay, so what's the day that iRunFar became your full-time gig?
I'm gonna guess around May 9th or something, 2009, maybe May 1st, somewhere in that first half of May, is when I quit my job, and I think I took out my first trip out to California in my Prius in mid-May, because I owned a house in Arlington, Virginia. Drove that out there, and then flew back and continued packing up my house and trying to sell my house, and then I drove through Canada to California.
Just because.
Oh, I went and saw my family in New Jersey, my grandma in upstate New York, and but yeah, I mean, you put a roof over my head in 2009 and 10, but we were just very new at dating, and this is when I moved in, we'd only visit each other long distance, so it was rocky, and not even anything bad, but I remember moving out there, and if things didn't work, and it wasn't any you just don't know,
yeah,
not bad, but just if things didn't work in that summer or that fall, all right, I'm gonna live in a Prius. That's the backup plan.
What could go wrong?
And yeah.
So one of
but okay, go ask your question.
You go.
It was interesting. I can't remember if it was right before I drove my car west on the first moving trip, or in between. It must have been before I went. I remember live blogging the Massanutten 100.
That's what I was going to ask about. So iRunFar at the beginning was a bit of a mishmash of everything. You were exploring different avenues of making money. You were trying to push the coaching thing. You were trying to push the freelance writing thing, the writing on iRunFar. You were trying to get kind of editorial assignments. And then you also did this live race blogging thing, which has now become one of the wings of iRunFar. What'd you do at Massanutten?
I mean, it was quite literally live blogging, and I guess you still see that. I watch some of the Apple computers events being live blogged essentially. But yeah, I just had a Blogspot blog, which is where iRunFar was for a long time, and we just had one live coverage page, and I remember just doing reverse cron, and the next update would come from I think Shaw Gap or whatever. I mean, there's whatever, pick a location on the Massanutten course, and I'd write a little update, publish, save changes, and then go to the next place, and probably was on my first iPhone at the time, and
which we just saw yesterday.
I still have it. that makes me think going to the ultra running museum someday.
How many ultra running races were tweeted in 2009, 2010 with the very first iPhone?
Yeah, not so many, because I remember talking about the first time I live cast a race, and the first time I was on Twitter was in December of that year at the North Face, which we'll get to, but. Yeah, I forgot for a while that it happened at Massanutten in May 2009.
Okay, so you got asked also that year to, I don't know, it seems to me it was kind of your first big outside editorial gig. Adam Chase asked you to write a part of, yeah. piece of his book, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was just one little section of a chapter, and I mean, I'd already done a little bit of running work through him for running times, and it was just kind of cool to write something that was going to appear in a book, not something I ever would have expected. I was writing some gear reviews online for Outside Online, and the Gear Junkie at the time, so it's kind of building a little bit of a, I don't know, reputation. I was doing a lot of freelance writing, so it kind of fit in at the time. Yeah.
Was it also the end of that summer that you did the Killian's Quest thing, or which year was that?
Yeah, that was that whole summer, I feel like, made iRunFar. Like, there'd been a lot of slow, incremental happenstance building through the years, but I mean, it was kind of a hard decision, but especially for you, I think in retrospect, is I decided after I moved out to Megan's in California to spend the summer on the road, 3 months.
So he brought his stuff to my house, and then he took off all summer long
on a road trip through the Canadian West. Oops.
While our relationship was brand new.
Hi, dear.
Hi.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had no money. I mean, I think I literally had a couple $100 a month income, and I mean, less than 500, and I had maybe $5,000 in the bank. But decided I'd get in my car and drive around the American West, and met a ton of people just going to races. I mean, I remember going to Western States, and I probably wrote about it, and went up, watched the Canadian Death Race. Our friend Sean Meisner was up there. Hung out in Leadville for a bunch. Went to outdoor retail.
Side note, I flew up to Banff for the weekend when you were going up to spectate at the Canadian Death Race, and so we got to meet up with each other. And I would just like to point out that when I met him, he was very like clean cut, buzz cut, careful facial hair, and that was the beginning of the outgrowth of the wild mane.
It comes and goes.
I just remember getting off the plane and like seeing him in Canada, and I was like, he's adapting to the ways of the West very quickly.
Plus, I didn't have to shave. So yeah, just going around the West was huge, and just making the number of not connections in any like connection sense, but just meeting people and hanging out, and yeah, it was very formative to iRunFar.
And then in the fall of 2009, I think it was, there was this young kid from
Europe,
from a place called Catalonia.
Where? Who?
What was his name?
Killian, I think.
Hornet?
Yeah, Killian Hornet.
Yeah. Hornet? Jornet?
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Jornet.
Yeah.
He was this fast kid from Europe who wanted to come and try to set a fastest known time on the Tahoe Rim Trail.
So he just had Killian's Quest. I mean, we've had summits of my life for years and years, but before that, there were years of Killian's Quest. And there was an initial episode, but the first project, I think the first project was Tahoe Rim. Which
was just a couple 100 miles away from where we were living, outside of Yosemite.
I'd kind of gotten to know some of the folks at Solomon in the U.S. a little bit, through, again, Adam Chase, and they were, and I met some PR people who I still work with to this day out of outside PR and out of the Bay Area, and everybody was like, you want to come out and share Killian's Quest, like take part in Killian's Quest, and write about it. And so I did. I got the unfortunate task of leading off pacing Killian. And it was almost one of the most embarrassing moments of my running life.
Let's just remind everybody that the distance of the Tahoe Rim
165 miles at the time.
Yeah. And he took off at a pace
that I couldn't keep up with. And I wasn't in like fast running fitness, but a month previous I had run a sub 20-hour Leadville. Like, I was reasonably fit.
Fit, altitude acclimated, and you weren't going to be going all the way around the lake.
No, I was going 5 miles. And he almost dropped me in the first mile. I would be like, Killian, you need to hang on here? Don't know where I'm going?
But yeah, like, Killian was a puppy then. I mean, we all kind of were puppies then, but Killian was a real puppy.
He was a kid.
20, right?
20, yeah, 21?
Yeah.
Something like that.
What was, I mean...
And he spoke no English.
A little bit of English.
A couple words.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew more Castellano than he... So, I mean, I would speak Spanish to him. I mean, he's fluent in Spanish as well as his native Catalan. So, yeah, I'd speak a couple words of Spanish or a little broken English, or we would try to communicate, and you can do a lot with smiles and gestures. But yeah, I mean, I still remember running with him, leading off, and then late in the day, just running high on the east rim of the Tahoe Rim Trail, and him just like brushing his hand against the plants alongside the trail, and just beautiful sunset, and it was pretty awesome.
And he did, of course, go on to set the FKT. And it's a time that still stands. And
it's probably an inside thing at this time, but he had the quote Sean Meisner, who was pacing him.
Sean.
Was pacing him in the middle of the night.
Try to leave this in the history books.
No. The headlamp that he borrowed from me died, and they ended up getting lost. Yeah.
So him and Killian went off of the Tahoe Rim Trail onto a side trail for how many miles?
A while.
And then they eventually found their way back.
And then talking about at the checkpoint, more kilometers, more fun.
And thus the saying was born. Still said today.
Yeah. So
that was fall of 2009.
September 2009. But to go back 1 month, I had been doing some freelance writing, but I was up at the Leadville 100, and I think it must have been Garrett Grobbins, who was he was the managing editor at Trail Runner magazine at the time, and I think he asked me,
Hello, Brendan.
Do you want to, or can you do a video interview with some of the favorites at, what about interviewing some of the favorites at Leadville and writing about it? And so I was like, if we can get a video camera up to me, I'll do it. So somehow I borrowed a video camera and interviewed. My first 2 interviews were Duncan Callahan and Anton Kropitschka.
Duncan Callahan.
Totally. Yep. Yeah.
So the first 2 iRunFar video race-related interviews.
Yep.
Very cool.
Well, we're getting some. Wow, we're getting some spammy. I guess this is a public, and we're getting all sorts of. Wow.
We should.
Yeah, there's some people that need some banning here. So.
After you did a little live, or rather race-related.
Sorry, we're getting.
Getting some spam coming in.
So, anyway.
Wow.
Well, hopefully we'll just have to filter it out here. 1 second. I apologize. This had never happened before. Next time we'll have to do a little moderation here. We were talking about interviewing.
Let's fast forward to late fall 2009. You'd been running all over the Mountain West. You'd done some races. Then you came home and you might have trained a teensy bit too hard.
Yeah.
And you got plantar fasciitis.
Well, there's a good backstory on why I trained too hard. So I forget. I ran Western States in 2004, 2005, and 2006 and continued putting in. And I think it was... So I didn't get in 2007. I didn't get in 2008. But 2008 was a fire year. And because of the fire year, they had to do some weird thing with the 2-time loser rule, which was then in effect. So I was supposed to have gotten in 2009. But they had to... I mean, they now had all of these people who weren't able to run the previous year, and then they wanted to spread out all of the 2-time losers at the time. So... And they did it ahead of time. Like, they did a drawing and told you if you were automatically in an 09, 2010, or 2011. And I was in 2011. Maybe it was 2010. I can't remember. But I get back to Megan's in fall of 2009. And I'm like,
just start running the heck out of things. Got plantar fasciitis.
It was really hilly it was like 2 routes where we lived, and all of them went uphill.
Everything was pretty steep.
Yeah.
And you were registered to run the North Face Endurance Challenge. Were you registered for the 50 mile?
Yeah.
Yeah. But on race morning, like we went there.
Yeah, we were staying in the hostel.
You were gonna run it, but you probably made the right call that morning.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to be able to get back to training. Like, I wasn't in excruciating pain, but it was a problem. I mean, I had plantar fasciitis. No, was it plantar then? Was it Achilles? No, it was plantar.
It was plantar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I knew I was in Western States, like way, way off, and it must have been 2010 I had an entry. And so I decided not to race. And
you picked up your phone.
And started tweeting.
You opened up this app called Twitter. And
this Twitter thing.
We did some updates.
Yeah. I remember
boom!
Me standing on a rock facing one way with my hand on the arm was born.
You live tweeted the race. Who won that year? Do you remember?
If it was 2009, was that a year that Uli Steedle beat out Jeff Rose, or was that the next year that there was like the Jeff Rose Uli battle?
Honestly, I can't remember.
With the puking in the parking lot, coming back at through Pantol. I think somebody splattered me that year.
So we took some photos. You live tweeted
Did Caitlin
the race.
Smith? I think she won the.
Caitlin Smith won that year. I remember taking her photos, like standing in the bushes, and I thought it was super awkward to stand on the side of the trail in bushes and take somebody's photos. And
because it is.
Because it is, still is. And live race coverage was born. We went home and went back to the hostel and wrote a race results article and processed our photos. And
I did, because
I took the photos.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think you were writing for iRunFar at the time.
I was writing for
Were you doing a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. But, yeah, so North Face 50 was the first time iRunFar tweeted. I think there'd have been a little bit.
Was born.
There'd have been a few other people. I mean, Keith Dunn had done a little tweeting of some races. And I think, other people may have, but that was the first time I was like, all right, let's give this new medium a try.
And then 2010.
I sat in a double wide
trailer.
Double wide trailer in the foothills.
In the foothills of the Sierra Nevada in California.
With no real neighbors. No worked at the post office down the road, so I'd go see No. Or I'd drive into the bustling. I would leave Mid-Pines and drive to the bustling metropolis of Mariposa to hang out at the coffee shop. The Pony Espresso.
Look, I love the foothills of the Sierra Nevada.
I was a bit isolated.
Yeah.
I had the best coworker ever. Junebug the Border Collie.
But you put your nose. You put your nose down. You worked hard. You
had what I considered a full stable of coaching clients. I mean, I had up to maybe a dozen, which is all I wanted. I didn't want to. I wanted it to be personal and customized, and I was still at that time. I was doing 3 articles a week for iRunFar, and more or less every article was mine. I don't know if I ever had a guest post that early, but yeah, was doing iRunFar, working pretty heavily on it.
How did I become involved with iRunFar? How do you remember that story going?
I don't remember much of it until we moved to Utah. So
if you guys got some iRunFar early days questions, we're about to wrap up our end of the story here. But
so please ask away.
Ask some questions.
So yeah, I don't know what you would have done. Maybe you did a couple reviews early on?
I did gear reviews. Did a couple
destination dirt pieces, but I kind of feel like that was once we moved to Utah, maybe in late 2010.
Yeah. Just random posts here and there.
You did some editing. You definitely would occasionally...
I actually never, ever at that point thought that iRunFar was ever going to be my thing.
Yeah, that could be a whole...
The way I see it is that I was just helping you get information onto your website to fulfill you wanted to have things out Monday, Wednesday, Friday every week, and
I was coaching as well as so we did that, and I mean, we were a year and a half or I was out in Yosemite for a year and a quarter, year and a half. And then we moved to Park City.
Utah?
Park City, Utah. Was it the summer of 2009 or was it the summer of 2010? It must have been the summer of 2010 at Outdoor Retailer that I was just having dinner and met Matt Hart and Eric Grossman. And I'd known both of them for a couple years. And we were just all at the Outdoor Retail show, had dinner together. And Eric Grossman had sort of taken over a book writing project. But didn't have the time to actually write the book. So I kind of got drawn into an existing contract for a ultra running guidebook that became Relentless Forward Progress.
Relentless Forward Progress. 2010?
That's when I think I got the assignment. It must have been 2011.
Because it was published in early 2000.
Because we were already in Park City. I remember having a retreat like that September with my uncle.
You're writing.
What was it? What was the lodge there? The Swank Lodge.
Yeah.
Steins?
One of the many.
Something like that. Anyway.
Sorry, Park City folks.
Had a great just kind of a retreat, wrote a bunch in a week with my uncle. He was working on a big project. And then put it on the back burner for a while. And I remember the publisher, or I think it was the publisher's like, so when we going to have the book by X? And like, this is the first time I heard of a deadline. So basically wrote and edited Relentless Forward Progress in a month. 80+% of it.
Amazing.
But it was totally out of happenstance. I don't want to ever say luck, because I definitely felt like everything that happened in those early years of iRunFar, and still to a degree what happens today, is you put yourself in a position for things to happen to you. If you're not there, nothing happens. And so many incidents of good luck happened in those early years with iRunFar, but it was because I was there and I was engaged all the time and said yes a lot. Now I probably say yes a little less often, thankfully, because there was a couple years that got out of control. We have a question about.
Allison says to me, "You've become a great interviewer. The last few have been just excellent, and you mentioned being an introvert. Can you talk about the process of learning to interview?" Maybe
we should just have I interview Megan day. Megan's increasing role.
Yeah, I am an introvert, and I mean, introversion versus extroversion is defined as where you get your energy from. I like to hang out in big groups, and I especially like to be around groups of familiar people and friends, but where I go to get my energy is time alone, and it's often time alone running. Talking to people, being with people, it's okay, but at some point the energy runs out and I have to go back to myself and find it again. But actually, like Allison, I really think that interviewing is a lot like having a conversation. I always go into an interview having researched a person and kind of come up with theoretical questions, or if it's an interview of somebody I've done before, I really have to think about, okay, what haven't we talked about at iRunFar before? What new thing has this person done? And then, so you're kind of thinking about those questions in the back of your head, but you're also just reading, what happens as the conversation goes. And yeah.
Those interviews are the most fun.
Yeah.
They just turn into a conversation. I mean, they're easier, but they're also more fun for us, and I think more fun for people following.
Allison, I really appreciate the compliment. It makes me feel good. You just try to keep the conversation going. Try to keep it comfortable for everybody. Try to read the people you're with.
Yeah. So, I guess, just a good segue of, you then started writing a little bit more for iRunFar, doing... I think I started paying you for writing an article.
Yeah, I would write an article and you would give me X amount of money for it. I don't remember what it was.
$100, maybe not even that.
Yeah.
Because you were freelance writing at the time.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot of different
projects.
projects.
Guiding and
you're making ends meet, babysitting in Park City.
Yep.
It probably wasn't until maybe it was the beginning of 2012 where you became a full-time employee.
I became a salaried iRunFar employee at the turn of the calendar year in 2013.
Oh, okay.
So I think I was contract, I don't know what the pay structure was like.
But
Before
by
that,
article.
but-
And then I think eventually we got to hourly on the editorial side.
Yeah.
And for a while it was, and I wanted to make it, it's just I couldn't.
Well,
but eventually.
2012 was when you took the website from 3 days of articles
5.
a week to 5, and that actually required like pre-planning, like putting together a regular stable of columnists, because like 30 articles a month, like you and me, we aren't doing
Or 20.
that.
Yeah.
Well, whatever it turns out to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was like probably the 2012 range where, you sort of set the basic editorial course and searched for columnists. And
I'm guessing around that time is when we had the iRunFar's store in full effect. Like, not just like iRunFar hats, but there were shoes and backpacks and, Salomon and Mountain Hardware and everybody's apparel. And oh my gosh.
So some of you may be familiar with the day when you could only buy trail running stuff online.
Usually you couldn't, period.
Well, yeah, there were a few places that sold it online. It was like Zombie Runner, iRunFar.
Yeah, I mean, like, there weren't brand, like, stores, companies didn't have, Salomon didn't sell
they didn't have an online store.
And that stuff wasn't on Zappos, and it wasn't on Amazon, so...
Running Warehouse.
I mean, I remember running Trans Rockies Run in 2009 and seeing people with Salomon exo calves and be like, whoa, those are cool, what are those? And I could find out information. Oh, it was 2008, but you couldn't get them in the U.S. for like 2 or 3 years. And I remember the iRunFar store, outside of being able to buy a hat, was born, hat or shirt with an iRunFar logo on it, was the marketing guy from Salomon USA went and had a meeting over in Europe, or headquarters in Annecy, France, and came back with a duffel bag of Salomon exo calves and was like, here, let's do an experiment. Can you sell these? And because my interest, and I'd, been partnering with them for a while, and they're like, well, let's try this.
Let's try it.
And they went like that, and definitely became kind of the only reason there was a store in that sense, it was to fill an unmet need. It wasn't to, for a while it was selling some of those products in the U.S. and that you couldn't get here. And then there were times where it was like Ultimate Direction didn't have, there were some brands I wasn't allowed to sell in other countries, like Salomon was U.S. only, but Ultimate Direction didn't have a distributor in a bunch of countries like Hong Kong or maybe Japan, definitely New Zealand. And I was allowed to sell overseas. So I sold a bunch of stuff from brands that would let me internationally. And it was just like filling that need, because other online stores wouldn't do the hassle of shipping internationally and taking that risk. And
let's also be honest, like the store also existed to pay iRunFar's bills.
I mean, if there was ever, if there was 1 year of heyday in terms of like, this is a little easier financially, was like the big year for the store.
For the store.
Yeah.
You had a limited stable of coaching clients.
By choice.
A bit of, some advertising at that point,
yeah.
But, we use the store as the mechanism to turn iRunFar into I don't know. We're never going to be super professional, like, let's be honest, but to turn it into what it is, right?
Yeah. And to be able to get to, I don't think people realize, but the vast majority of our like race coverage is like essentially out of pocket. Like now, some of the bigger races we get sponsorship, and a couple international races we might let the race like help us get there or stay there. But there's a ton of events that we're paying everything out of pocket, and like to cover that difference, like the store did it for a while. Yeah. So, and I don't know. I don't think we'll ever go back, just because it's not my interest, and that need is kind of filled with Amazon and the brands and everybody these days. But I could definitely see us offering some more sort of custom product. Maybe some of you may remember the Smart Wool shirts we had during last year's Hard Rock, which people loved, and
which I love.
I have a couple of those, and the iRunFar thermoball jackets from North Face. We've got a couple. We've got one sitting in my office at the moment.
We have a brand new custom product. It arrived on Friday.
And there's a couple in our minds and a couple in the works. So, I'm excited to share some of those over the coming years. And we love having people get iRunFar gear because they get to have iRunFar gear, and we love having it too. But it's also a way that kind of helps make iRunFar work.
My final question for you, since this is an interview after all.
Yep.
Last question. Ultra running is like a passion sport.
Yeah.
iRunFar, it started as like a passion project. What is it to you now? Like all these years later, like...
What day are you're asking me this today? Okay. Today, it's great. I mean, I'm getting to have this chat with everybody and went for a run in the afternoon. I will work most of my Sunday, which is fine. But it's with some exciting stuff ahead. Last year, we kind of had a personal and then a group retreat in like last autumn. And I didn't have enough fun last year. But we've worked on scheduling a little more fun for me. And since I have a trip to Alaska coming up on Wednesday.
Yeah, I was going to say, like in a couple days.
Like,
pack your bags.
I'll be in 3 days from now, I'll be in a plane on the way to Seattle, on the way to Fairbanks. So yeah, like.
Brian's going to try to have more fun in 2018.
And the last 4 or 5 months, I've been here in Moab working my butt off to, in part, prepare for that. I'll still have more than a full plate of work through most of the year, but with Alaska on the schedule, and from I go cover Lake Sonoma, which will be an intense week, and then go to the Tibetan Plateau for a week and a half, which will be awesome.
You got a lot of fun coming up.
And then I get to train for Hard Rock after going to cover the Peñagolosa
Trail World Championships.
So right now things look good. But I also got a good night of sleep last night, which helps.
That helps a lot. iRunFar remains a passion project.
Yeah, if there wasn't a spark, like, I mean, I wouldn't turn off the lights tomorrow, but I mean, last autumn, if we're honest, like, that was a discussion. Like, is there enough spark here? And is there enough...
Do we love what we do?
To deal with all the stress and tiredness and uncertainties of doing iRunFar to keep going through that? And the answer was, you know what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Do it.
Do it. So here we are.
Patreon family, we've come to the end of our March Patreon chat. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you so much for making iRunFar happen, because, I mean, you guys, the support you're offering us, like, really has been a game changer. I mean,
Patreon has changed it. So, yeah.
I literally 2 days ago ordered that new satellite modem that was in one of the sort of goals for earlier in the year.
So yeah, it was if we hit how many people we got to get a new satellite modem?
Then it might have been 400. It was a little while ago.
So on behalf of myself, I am the great user of the satellite modem, and I have taken that satellite modem to so many places, but I am so happy to retire it and have a new one. Yeah,
the new one, it'll be lighter, it'll be faster.
So the satellite modem
Wi-Fi.
was like 6 pounds, people. I carried it all over this green earth.
I don't know how many runs down to and up from the Rocky Chucky River crossing I've done with a 5-pound laptop, the 6-pound modem, whatever else I was carrying. Holy moly.
So we got a new satellite modem thanks to the Patreon family.
And you guys made it possible. We will get a new laptop. Megan's is on its last legs. Mine has reached capacity for me. But we do try to get every ounce of value out, every cent of value out of $1. So we're hoping we can limp along with our computers until
the new Mac update.
The MacBook Pro updates happen, hopefully in April or June.
Come on, Mac. Let's go, Apple. Okay, so the Patreon family chat for April is still to be determined.
Date-wise.
Date-wise, but we are hoping to bring you the iRunFar family video chat out from Lake Sonoma, and we cannot confirm, mum's the word, we can't confirm or deny that we're going to have a guest.
We're hoping.
Fingers crossed, people. No, we're going to do our Patreon April chat from Lake Sonoma, and we're going to have a fun guest with you there. So follow our Patreon page for updates on that. And what else can we say? Thanks for listening to the story of iRunFar's early days, and thanks for making iRunFar's advanced aging possible. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and Henry Bickerstaff, you've got a question, and we've kind of just wrapped up, but where do we see iRunFar in 5 or 10 years? I mean, I think that's to be determined. One thing that we didn't talk about is when I went out to move from Arlington, Virginia to Mid-Pines, California, when I made the transition to iRunFar full-time, I had a list of, like, what can I do to make not to what iRunFar would be, what can I do to keep this going? And it was coaching and advertising and camps and races and tours and blah, blah, blah. And I think through the years we've thought about that the same with what iRunFar does in terms of articles and races and instructional magazine type content. And I mean, I think we don't know what iRunFar will be in 5 or 10 years.
We've got a long list of ifs and maybes, and yeah, I think
and I mean, we kind of had to put a lot of those away with a lot of the uncertainty of, say, last year. I kind of just had to personally package those up and put those away. And then with how things are going this year with the Patreon support and some other growth at iRunFar, like there are things that we can do in the future and ways to grow, and we're really excited about it.
Henry, thank you for asking that question. We're dreaming, and yeah, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Thanks, everybody.
So thanks for coming.
Talk to you next month.
And thank you for your Patreon support. See you in April.
Now I gotta...
Control room.